Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Celebrating Earth Day from A Force for Good. My name's Rodney Wittenberg, and I'm your technical host for the evening. I'm also the co-director of the films that we're going to see tonight. And in a couple of little housekeeping notes, if you can all keep your viewer in speaker mode, then you'll be able to see everything that's going to be happening this evening, as opposed to seeing everyone on the screen all at once. I'll be directing, putting people in, bringing people in and out of the spotlight so that you'll be able to see them and hear them. So sit back, enjoy. If you have some questions, you can either raise your hand or unmute yourself, but we're asking everyone to stay muted throughout the whole event unless you have something that you want to add during the Q&A. You can also type messages into the chat, and we'll be able to respond to them as we see them. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the force behind A Force for Good, Mr. Jonathan Sprout.
Welcome to Force for Good. I am very grateful for this opportunity. This is our third event, and this is about celebrating Earth Day. We have some very powerful people on board in the next hour and have a lot that we want to accomplish. Essentially, Force for Good is a group of passionate artists. We are recording artists and filmmakers and publicists, and we are consciously trying to do our part, frankly, to help make the earth a better place. And we want to focus today on climate change and some solutions for it. So let's jump right into our first of two films tonight. This is an award-winning film that Rodney and I co-directed called Solar. Rodney, take it away.
I love my solar panels. In 2017, I had 26 of them installed on the roof of my home. They are guaranteed for 25 years, and yet they'll pay for themselves in half that time, which means it's an 8% return on my investment. So I'm not only making money from these panels, but probably more importantly, I'm doing good for the environment. 12,000 pounds of carbon offset every year from these panels. Every year, times 25 plus years. So if you have a sunny spot and you have a few $1,000s to invest, go solar. You'll help the environment. You'll make money. It's a win-win.
We are in the midst of an existential crisis. Let's be honest about it. Our planet is undergoing dramatic climate changes created by humans, which threaten our existence. Fossil fuel exhaust, now in the atmosphere, is a big part of the problem. It traps heat, warming Earth's atmosphere, contributing to what scientists refer to as positive feedback loops that hurt the planet and may, in the future, become irreversible. Each of us must do more to become part of the solution to climate change and less of the cause of climate change. It's time to up the game. What can one person do? Bicycle, walk, use public transportation more, drive and fly less, consolidate shopping trips and internet deliveries. Don't buy gas guzzling vehicles. Reduce, reuse, and recycle, especially plastic. Compost. Plant trees. Mow less. Eat more organically and locally grown plants. Eat less meat. Burn less fossil fuel. If we care about the lives of our descendants, we must each consciously work toward living energy net zero lives, less fossil fuel. We must live, work, and shop in buildings that produce as much energy as they use. Net zero lives. We have the technology to do this. There are federal and state government incentives in place. And our special guests tonight created a solar energy company that offers solutions to Earth's climate crisis. Dara and Mark Bortman are Ivy League University of Pennsylvania graduates who created Exact Solar. Solar is all they do, installing solar energy systems that generate free energy, clean energy, for years to come. Their company has earned a spot on the Solar Power World's Top Solar Contractors of North America list for 7 consecutive years from 2014 to 2020. They've earned an Angie's List Super Service Award for 6 consecutive years from 2013 to 2018. They've won the Best of Bucks County here in Pennsylvania 2019 award for solar panel installations. Harness the sun, power your home, free your wallet, save the planet. Welcome, Dara and Mark Bortman. Let's start right in with a question to Dara, who, Mark, I don't think you'll be offended if I say, is the chattier of the two of you. Dara, what do you think is the most important question, the most important point about clean energy technology that most people don't yet realize?
All right, well, thank you for that. Can you hear me? All right, good. Thank you for that awesome introduction. It is much appreciated. And it is really nice to do a job every day that you love to do, but also, you know, is helping the planet and the world move towards a clean and fast transition to 100% clean energy. That's a great question. And I'm gonna say that the most important thing that most people don't realize about clean energy now is that solar energy is already the cheapest electricity, the cheapest energy ever created by humankind, period. It's come down in cost over 80% in the last decade, and it's actually projected the cheapest electricity ever created by humans is also projected to, again, go down in price another 80% in the next decade. It is a technology. One of the things I think a lot of people don't think about solar, wind, is that there's no fuel. It's just a technology, and inherently a technology only gets more efficient and less expensive over time. So and the great thing about solar especially, and also wind, is that it's quickly deployable. I think Vietnam, I heard a crazy number that Vietnam just deployed like 70 megawatts of solar electricity in the last half a year. It's crazy how fast you can do it. And once a solar farm or a wind farm is installed, you don't have to ever dig up, transport, or burn any additional fuel. It just sits there and generates electricity for 25 to 30 years, like you said about your solar panels. Maybe even
there are no moving parts.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So as long as a tree doesn't fall on it, it'll keep generating. It might get a little bit less efficient over time, but it's going to keep generating electricity. So one of the things that I like to talk about when I talk to groups is that people don't realize that this clean energy is so different. Every energy type needs a infrastructure built initially, right? We need a natural gas power plant. We need a nuclear power plant built, and those take billions of dollars. They often have huge cost overruns and they take decades to build sometimes, right? Whereas, a solar farm you can put up in a month or two. And those infrastructures require more fuel, constantly feeding it, that millions of years of carbon that we're burning, constantly once that infrastructure is built. Clean energy, no, none of that, right? So once that infrastructure is built, there's no additional carbon costs. It's just there, and it continues to create electricity. So technology just gets more efficient and less expensive. And we're at the point now where it's, in some cases at industry scale, at industrial scale, solar and wind, it is less expensive to build an entire new solar farm or wind farm, put it in the ground, put the things, get it up and running and get the energy out of it, than it is to continue to operate an existing, already built fossil fuel power plant. Think about that. A power plant that's already been built. We spent billions of dollars creating it. It's chugging along. We're burning stuff and transporting stuff, but it's cheaper to start from scratch in some cases with clean energy, build a whole new solar farm and create the electricity. That electricity is cheaper than the electricity coming out of those fossil fuel power plants. It is throwing money down the drain now for governments to be investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure, period. That's what people don't realize. And we as a society, we have to do all the things that you talked about, Jonathan, individually. It's so important that we all take those steps, but communally, we need to elect representatives that understand these things and are going to change the system so that we transition as quickly as possibly, as efficiently as possible to a clean energy infrastructure. And stop investing in fossil fuel infrastructure and start investing in smart grids, EV charging infrastructure, helping, getting buildings more efficient and smarter, all of those things, getting the transportation industry electrified. Those are the things that we have to do together as a community.
So I've heard it said that renewable energy is great, but that we don't have the capability yet. We don't have the square yardage yet to go 100% renewable. I believe the statistic of we're currently generating energy, at least here in America, something like 79% of energy generated is with fossil fuels. So, I mean, if you were president today and you had complete control over Congress and the Senate, Dara, would you still, and you could pass any law you wanted, do we have the technology today to, I mean, I know we can go in that direction, but don't we still need to need fossil fuels to supplement energy now? Or I see, Mark, you're shaking your head no.
No, the reality is that no, we don't. And I have a statistic here. We would actually, if we went to 100% clean energy in the United States, we would reduce the amount of land used. We would only need 0.65% of US land for solar and wind production, and fossil fuels currently use 1.3% of American land. So that is not true. We would use globally also, the number is much lower of the amount of land we would use to run on clean energy. And the fact is that we already have, in conjunction with solar and wind, we have hydropower, which we would use. It can act as a battery. We also have other battery technologies that are developing now. Those also are on the same trajectory as wind technologies, come down about 45% cost in the last 10 years, again, projected to do the same in the next 10 years. And batteries have come down about, I have the number here, 80 plus percent, 87% in cost over the last decade, and again are projected to go down again another 80% in cost in the next decade. And all of those also in conjunction with efficiency improvements. So if we start today transitioning to clean energy, we have the technology we need, and it'll only get cheaper and more efficient as we implement it over the next decade. That's all we really need to get to where we need to go. We'll develop new technologies for carbon sequestration and more efficient batteries, but we're at a point now where we can start doing what we need to do with the technology that we have to transition to clean energy by 2030. That's really what we need to be doing. We can't be waiting for some new fancy technology or new, thing that's going to take a lot of time to deploy to do this transition. We need to do it now, and we have the technology now.
So, Mark, I don't want to totally shut you out of this conversation. I know everyone. I know both of these people, and they do a very good division of labor situation in their marriage. Dara is good at selling the systems, and Mark is good at installing them. And Mark, I think of you as the you know more of the nuts and the bolts. I mean, is there a way of anything else you want to contribute, or can I just ask another question? Like, what can we as individuals then end up doing to integrate?
Right. Well, so to answer your last question, if I was president right now or head of the Senate or whatever, the one change I would get in place immediately is to stop subsidizing fossil fuels. If we could just level the playing field, then the transition to clean energy, which is heading that way right now, would become a stampede, because we're artificially subsidizing, inflating the benefits of the cost benefits of fossil fuels. And if we were to level that playing field, it would become much more obvious, not just the environmental benefits of clean energy, but the economic benefits as well. So in terms of things that individuals can do, I used to think a lot about the most important things that individuals could do, such as eating less meat and becoming more having their houses become more energy efficient and stuff like that. But in all honesty, the number one thing that people could do is elect the right people. Get like-minded officials in positions of power to dismantle the structures, the artificial barriers that keep the country and the world from going in the right direction.
Well, you've both just shattered one of my. I mean, I've owned solar panels, thanks to you both, for 4 years. I mean, I have my panels have reduced the emissions of 50,000 pounds of carbon, and I know this from the app that I get every day. I check. So, yeah, but you just shattered my idea. I thought, even as a solar expert that I think I am, that we weren't ready yet technologically. So that's very, very interesting to me. That's mind-boggling. That if we just leveled the playing field, renewable energies would more than stand a chance. And there's another element I want to bring in, and just to be time conscious, we're trying to keep this whole thing moving. So in the next few minutes, it's not just about saving the planet, it's also about making money. I mean, let's be honest. Solar panels are a good financial investment. And as I said at the beginning of the film that Rodney and I made, 8% return on my investment. I mean, I have money in Wells Fargo now that's making, I think it's 0.01%. And this is if I'm doing my math right, this is like 800 times the amount of money I'm making by having panels on my roof instead of money in my bank account. So this is significant. And I wish more people understood this. You need money up front, yes. And I know you both have offered through Exact Solar a means so that people can, in a sense, it's a little complicated, but borrow money to pay for the panels and still come out ahead. You need to have a sunny spot. I mean, I'm not trying to tell people to cut down trees. You know, trees are valuable, but if you do have a sunny spot and the money, it seems like not just an environmental necessity, but a financial necessity as well.
I'll add that your return is actually lower than average, and actually numbers have gotten better since you installed, because as we talk about, prices just continue to get incrementally lower and the panels get more and more efficient. So those numbers do tend to go up slightly, although incentives also go up and down. So this federal tax credit is lower now than what you were able to use. It was 30%, now it's 26% federal tax credit. But yeah, I mean, and the second thing was, now it's flown out of my head, but as far as subsidies are concerned, as Pennsylvanians, we subsidize, our government subsidizes fossil fuels over $3 billion a year. That's at the state level, not the federal level. It's much, much higher at the federal level. But if we all talk to and elected representatives for Pennsylvania, which is historically not that friendly to clean energy, that understood that we're artificially lowering the cost of fossil fuels, of what we see on our electric bill and our gas bill, because we're all subsidizing that, but to the tune of $3 billion a year. Let's just level that playing field. Let's get rid of all energy subsidies. I'm all for that, because I know that we're subsidizing clean energy a lot less than fossil fuels, both at the state and federal level. And once you got rid of it and leveled the playing field, it's a no-brainer, literally a no-brainer. And most people will, if they have a roof, a sunny roof, will have that same return. Also, we do offer financing loans. I don't know if we talked much about that when you were buying, but a loan very often will replace what people are paying to PECO on their PECO bill every month with just an equal loan payment. So it's like no money out of pocket to purchase an a solar energy system.
Right. Okay. Well, we want to include somebody in the conversation who we met through you both. For those of us on the call, Dara and Mark at Exact Solar are good people. They're decent people as well as good business people, and they contribute part of their success to some charitable organizations. And one of them I learned about through you both, called Power Up Gambia. And we have Lynn McConville, who is the executive director of Power Up Gambia. Welcome, Lynn. And would you tell us a little bit about Power Up Gambia, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Jonathan. We really appreciate you having us on here tonight. You know, your mission to inspire and empower people is something that really resonates with Power Up Gambia, because it was the vision of a hospital administrator in the Gambia who wanted his hospital to have solar power that really led to our creation. And when you think about it, if you could imagine if you were to show up at a hospital and it was an emergency, maybe it's late at night, and you show up at the hospital and there's no electricity. There would be no lights. There would be no water for sanitation. There would be equipment lying around, but nobody could use it. The doctors and the nurses would be struggling with, what they could possibly do with the limited resources. That's unimaginable really here in the United States. But unfortunately, it's actually very common in many countries. Many developing countries, electricity is unreliable. Many places it's unavailable or it's very, very expensive. So this is a situation that actually a young American volunteer, Catherine, encountered when she went to volunteer at the hospital in the Gambia in West Africa. She was at the hospital and realized that there were so many things that could not be done because they had a serious problem with electricity. And when she was getting ready to leave, the hospital CEO shared with her his vision, his dream of having clean, reliable electricity for the hospital through solar power. She was inspired by that, and she came back and created Power Up Gambia. Our mission is to provide solar power solutions to hospitals and clinics in the Gambia and West Africa. We do large-scale projects for hospitals, but we also go down to small rural clinics where we do what's called a small solar suitcase. It's a plug-and-play unit that is easy to install, easy to maintain, that they can use with a focus on maternal health, providing lighting and equipment for midwives and nurses who are working with women in the villages. And so, we've been working with Power Up Gambia in doing this, and the solar power solutions really are, very, very amenable to the Gambia. It's economical, it's reliable, and there's a real desire for it. So we work with a lot of volunteers, a lot of student volunteers who work with us either here in the United States or even go out to the Gambia and work on projects with us there. And it's really, we're trying to solve some of the solutions of lack of electricity, and using solar power to really improve healthcare and to save lives. And this is really a very vital thing that can be done throughout the world. The Gambia is a small country, but we do what we can in that area. And we had a volunteer who was going to join us here, is one of the volunteers, Ari. If he's available, we thought maybe he could describe a little bit about what it was like working in the Gambia, installing some of these solar suitcases in the rural clinics.
Hey, Ari, welcome.
Thank you for having me. And thanks for the introduction, Lynn. So I worked a few years ago with Lynn at Power Up Gambia and traveled over to the Gambia during one of our first rounds of installations of these solar suitcase products. So these were going, like Lynn said, they're small self-contained solar energy systems. The primary components are the collectors on the roof coming down to a battery that powers lights, phone chargers, and a fetal heart rate monitor. And that's it. So like Lynn was saying, these are addressing, this is for clinics that don't have reliable electricity. Something as simple as that. A lot of these, very, very rural clinics, very far away from the nearest town, or, hours away from the nearest larger hospital. And so at these clinics, a lot of times in the maternity wards where we were installing the lighting, nurses and midwives would often be delivering babies by the light of a cell phone that they would hold in their teeth very commonly, and things like that. So, so these are really fantastic products. Also for the reason that Lynn described, that they're simple, kind of a plug and play design with easily interchangeable parts. And what was really important, and what remains really important about the model that Power Up Gambia uses is they act as kind of a facilitator of the installation process by the actual Gambian Ministry of Health. So when I was over there, Lynn and I talked to Ministry of Health officials, and I was embedded with a team of technicians from the Ministry of Health, who are their go-to guys for all sorts of tech problems. And Lynn used to cite this statistic when we were over there, and I would see it myself when we traveled clinic to clinic, that all of these clinics ended up, or not all, many clinics would end up with a small solar energy system kind of plopped down by some European NGO. And I think the statistic Lynn used to cite is that about 75% of them, after a few years, break or require maintenance, and they're all different suppliers of solar technology, and there aren't the people with the knowledge to fix the systems. And I would see it myself that sometimes there would be a non-functioning system with a newer system placed right next to it, instead of a company, an NGO having come in and fix the system. They put in another system, and then often the second system was also non-functioning for a simple reason. And what's so important about Power Up Gambia's model is that they are creating not just the existence of a solar energy system that provides light, but they're creating the knowledge and the skills and the system within the country to supply and to repair and to service and to expand these this technology within the country. And I teach kids at a religious school, and there's a word in Hebrew that translates often to charity or giving charity. But the root of the word etymologically is actually justice. And I think that's something really important to remember when we're thinking about the difference between Power Up Gambia and the other institutions that delivered just plopping down a solar energy system. That if we are concerned about immediate results, we're going to cut carbon emissions from this health center by putting a set of solar panels. We're going to put lights in this health center by putting a set of solar panels. We're giving, but it's not sustainable climate and environmental justice, right? If we want to see real sustainable change in developing countries to really expand healthcare in the Gambia, we have to do exactly what Power Up Gambia does, which is put the skills, the technology, and the wealth into the hands of the communities that are on the front lines, that are the members of the communities, and that are suffering from the results of climate change, and are in need. And I think that really also speaks back to what Dara and Mark have been saying. If this technology is clearly the best solution, it's cost-wise, it's the best solution. When we take it over to the Gambia, the alternatives for lighting and small-scale power at these remote clinics are diesel generators that are terribly dirty, terribly expensive to keep feeding gas, loud, just awful in every way for a hospital or clinical setting. Solar is clearly the better option for us on those small scales, and for us as a country. And we have to just look at, good.
Yeah, you are passionate. You both are very passionate about this. It's obvious to see. And you are a 501c3 or 501(c)(3). I always get them confused. You are a charitable organization. Good timing, Rodney. I see the card up. Just a note on this, friends who are all in on this call. We at Force for Good do not touch any of the money contributed. It goes directly to our designated charity. In this case, it's Power Up Gambia. I'm hearing from you both that it goes right to, paying for the panels and for all the installation. And it's money well spent. I also want to say thank you to everyone on this call. Some of you have been with us for all 3 calls. And after our first 2 calls, we have reached a total of over $10,000 donated to our designated charities. So we're counting on at least 5,000 from you people tonight to match what we've done so far. We'd like to double that. Do I sound like, who is that guy? Jerry at the fundraisers on Labor Day. Anyway, this is a great cause. And when you make this contribution, we don't touch the money. It goes straight to charity. There's no percentage taken out. So I think that's all wonderful that you're both involved in this as heavily as you are. And we're in full support of everything you're doing. So let's jump right into some Q&As. It's your time now, callers, to ask questions through the chat room. And I'll introduce you to Lisa Gage, our publicist, our marketer at Force for Good. Lisa is carefully culling through your writings so that she can read the best of your questions and direct them to the people who can best answer them. Dara, Mark, Lynn, Ari, take it away, please, Lisa.
Okay, well, I just want to start off by saying that it seems like we have a number of experts about solar energy systems and different renewable energy systems. So I am probably not going to read all of these, but I'm going to give little synopses and see if Dara and Mark can comment. From Donna. Donna says, we have the technology to make oxygen from carbon dioxide on Mars. We need to use this technology on Earth. In British Columbia, Canada, they have a plant that takes the carbon dioxide out of the air and turn it into carbon fuel that can impact our carbon footprint immediately. So why aren't we jumping all over this?
I can take I don't know a lot about carbon sequestration. Can you hear me? Am I back on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I do know that just like solar panels, it's a technology that's being heavily invested in by the government, not only our government, but other governments as well. And NASA, actually solar panels were first developed for NASA for space. So all of these technologies are technologies that often come out of government investment, including a lot of what's going on with carbon sequestration technology right now. I do think that in the future, there's going to be, that's definitely going to be something that's, helpful to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. The reality is that right now it's extremely expensive and not really viable at large scale. I've seen some models and pictures of basically university and government systems that are, people that are working on this technology, and it's very cool. But it's really not viable yet to really pull the amount of carbon out of the atmosphere that we have in the atmosphere and that we need to get out. I think Bill Gates has kind of made it sound sexy and kind of led people to feel like, oh, we don't have to change anything about our behavior because we're going to develop these great technologies to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. But the reality is that those won't be around for at least 10 more years, and they're very, very expensive. So we need to be doing things now to be changing our behaviors and reducing the carbon in the atmosphere. I do think that carbon sequestration will be part of the picture down the line, maybe 10, 20 years from now. But right now, it's not really a huge scale viable technology from what I've heard, although very cool. So,
okay.
Could I, Lisa, could I jump in on that?
Yeah.
And just underscore something that Dara just said, which is when we're talking about using carbon sequestration, carbon capture, carbon offsets, yes, they're very expensive. Yes, they're unreliable. And relying on carbon offsets to get to this idea of carbon neutrality, right now, our problem is that we have an energy system that we know when we burn fossil fuels, we destroy lives and homes and communities. We know for a fact that's the result of burning fossil fuels. And reliance, saying we're just going to capture that carbon later on and keep doing what we're doing now, is just an excuse that only we who have great, only we, the American government, institutions with great amounts of wealth, can use as basically an excuse to not change the way that we operate. Burning fossil fuels is just the last destructive piece of a system that based on destruction for profit, right? And so as I just wanted to put that out there and say, if we're thinking about why, if solar and renewable energies are so clearly the better option, far better option than carbon capture at this point, why are we not moving in that direction? What are the hindering forces that would like us to use carbon capture so that we can continue to burn and destroy for profit, rather than the clear, better answer of making a clear, better, and cheaper answer of implementing renewable energy right now, and then dealing with carbon later, and just realizing that fossil fuel companies that make the money from burning fossil fuels spend millions and millions of dollars annually to lobby against, to maintain their own subsidizations, to lobby against pro-renewable energy subsidizations, and to basically propagandize the public. We've all heard of downplaying climate change, but also upplaying the value of carbon capture and sequestration, because carbon capture and sequestration is an excuse to not change a destructive energy system. Sorry to butt in there.
That's great. You're the youngest person on this call, so it's good to hear your enthusiasm. Okay, from Dina, what is the expected lifespan of the suitcase solar systems, and are any being used in the US at this time?
Well, that's a great question. The solar suitcases, they're actually designed and built by We Care Solar, which is another charity that we partner with. And the panels can basically last, the 20, 25 years. We have a system in place so that if any of the other components are damaged, we can replace them in country. And the batteries, basically they're a lithium ion battery, so we're anticipating about 10 years. There are small kits like it that are used in the United States, but to be honest, we like our energy. These systems are basically small for the small clinics where they have very little or no electricity at all. Most people in the US would not be satisfied with just lights and cell phone charging, but you can buy systems like that. Our goal is, as we develop our systems, that we'll be able to expand on the solar suitcase so we can provide more and more power to those clinics with time so that they're able to use more and more equipment. But the solar suitcase is a great start for those clinics that are really struggling to provide any power at all.
Okay, we have 2 more questions if we have time. From Jean-Lou. Jean-Lou is intrigued with battery technology that you talked about earlier, Dara. Is this energy that can be used for electric cars?
I couldn't find my unmute button. I might actually let Mark answer this. Yeah, I mean, you can use it for anything. The type of battery that we generally install in a home for battery backup is very similar to the type of battery that's in electric vehicles. So there's lots of different types of batteries, and my vision of a smart grid in the future, and I think that of many researchers that are working towards a smarter grid, is one where there's lots of what we call microgrids and decentralized little grids. And so imagine in the future when all of us have electric vehicles and they're all plugged into the grid to charge overnight or for lunch or when we're at work or whatever. And imagine if the grid was smart enough to know when you needed the electricity for your car and how much you needed, and knew that it could use 10% of it at any given moment, so that all of those electric cars plugged into the grid at any given moment augmented the power on the grid over solar farms and rooftop solar and wind farms and all that stuff. So all that battery storage would be available for the grid when it needed it, when the cloud went by, or when when it was nighttime or whatever, something like that. That is the vision of a smart grid in the future, where it's all connected and those electric vehicle batteries are usable by the grid as needed, while still allowing people to have their cars topped up to the the point that they need it. But that's the vision I have. Mark, what about you? Any input?
No, I agree with that. To get back to John Liu's original question, electricity is electricity, and so whether you're using it, storing it in a battery to use in your car, or storing it in a battery to run your air conditioner or your lights or anything like that, it's all the same electrons moving through the wires. Yep.
I think I can sort of add that the batteries in most home solar systems now are the weakest link. Would you agree with that, Mark? That, for instance, when you advised me on the panels that I have on my roof, it was not as savvy, financially worthy to get batteries, because they just weren't as efficient. They weren't, it made more sense, in other words, to be plugged into the grid.
Right. There's a couple of different reasons. Right now, we have a system called net metering. So when your solar panels on your house produce more than what you need in your house, the extra goes out to the electric grid and someone else uses it. And then when you need more electricity than what your solar panels are producing, it comes in from the grid. And at the end of the month, when you get your bill, you're only paying for the net amount of electricity used. So whatever came in from the utility minus whatever you sent out. And so that's a perfectly efficient system, where every kilowatt hour that you send out to the grid is worth 1 kilowatt hour that comes in from the grid. If you were to, so when we install batteries in people's homes right now, typically that battery just sits around waiting. The battery is just fully charged and sits around waiting. So when the power goes out, you have some power to run your fridge and your lights and stuff like that. So it's a relatively big investment for a small return, because that battery's sitting around doing nothing for 95, 96, 97% of the time. So that's really, from a financial standpoint, that's why we don't, if you really want some power when the power goes out, then batteries are a great answer. But from a return on investment standpoint, it's kind of hard to make that argument.
I'll add to that in different parts of the country, it works differently. So in California, where they have different rates that they pay for peak and off-peak pricing for their electricity, and their prices are much, much higher than what we pay here in Pennsylvania, it makes sense for them to do a bit of power arbitrage. It doesn't make sense here because we don't have that, and we pay a lot less for our electricity. It's the same price all day long. We use the grid as the battery, basically. We export and then we get a credit. Fine. In California, if it's a difference between buying electricity at 50 cents a kilowatt hour during peak hours and 20 cents a kilowatt hour during off-peak hours, you might want to have a battery where you save your electricity when it's cheaper and use it from your battery and not from the grid when it's more expensive. So in parts of the country, they do that. Here in our part of the country, we're not doing that because we don't have time of use billing. It is going to be rolled out at some point, likely. Pico's talking about it. And at that point, it may start to make sense to do similar things. But right now, you export a kilowatt hour, you import a kilowatt hour. It's a 1-for-1 credit. It's more cost effective to use the grid as your battery instead of buying one yourself. At this
Lisa,
point,
do we have a final question before closing?
I was thinking that we might just end there and draw everyone's attention to the fact that Rodney put the donation link into the chat for Power Up Gambia. If people want to take it from there, they can see it. But I think
Yeah,
we're
and
out of time, so I think maybe we'll just close there.
right. And I don't think you can click on this on your screen. So if you don't want to write all that down, you can look up Power Up Gambia on the web. It's easy to find. That just when you donate your thousands of dollars, just say that you did it because of Force for Good. We want the credit. This is our big metric. This is how we know we're successful. We're not paid for what we do. Our metric for success is in your generosity. How's that for guilt? Putting you through some guilt. Anyway, friends, let's wrap this up. We do have the premiere of our film called Natural, which celebrates the beauty of the natural world. And it's already won, I think, 2 film awards, Rodney, I think. So I will say goodbye to you all and show you this film. And we're going to see you again, hopefully. Look at my notes. June 13th is our online event number 4. We will feature our film Safe, winner of 6 film awards, including Humanitarian Award, was just awarded that. And our charity will be featured is an organization called States United, which is a grassroots organization that links, I think it's 30 some individual state organizations that are all working toward sensible gun legislation. We all have the right to be safe, and that is something we will be talking about passionately on June 13th. So you are on our email list. We'll be letting you know more about it, but just please mark that on your calendar. So we love you. Thank you for joining us, and let's talk natural.
Technological advances have made it possible to practically live inside virtual realities. Virtual reality can be engaging and positive unless we lose sight of the natural world. Our happiness and survival are more dependent upon nature than most of us realize. Nature heals, it rejuvenates, it deepens and calms, allowing us to reconnect with ourselves so we can live grounded, authentic lives. The natural world offers us the antidote to stress and burnout, gives us perspective, thrills us with beauty and wonder, and makes life worth living. Let's not lose sight of the real reality, because nothing will matter if we lose that. After all, we are nature, so let's honor and protect it, because it's only natural.